Greetings! When you need to dress your tweezers, you've got four options. One, you can use a sharpening stone. Cost about $25 for a new one. Two, use a manufactured product like these DiaSharp pads. These come in different grits, denoted by the color of their backing, and they come in different sizes. I bought the most portable and cheapest set, which are 3 credit card sized pads, and they've worked great for me over the past year. Cost about 35 bucks. Third option, you can use a manufactured plate made for sharpening tweezers. Or you could buy a similar product, just not from Bergeon. I happened to find this one in one of my web searches. Cost between $20 to $30 new. Or, fourth option, you can use the most expensive tweezer dressing tool in the world. This is a Vigor TW-1000, which was also sold as a Bergeon 4985. It's not manufactured anymore, so you'll find it only as a used tool. Cost $150 to $200 used. The TW-1000/Bergeon 4985 is far more expensive and involved than the other alternatives. When I first learned about it, I noted two things. Nobody had ever used it except for one forum post where the author had just bought it and wanted to learn tips for how to use it. The second thing I noted is that everyone said it wasn't worth the money. Also, a couple of hundred for a tool, especially in watchmaking, isn't outrageous. So nobody had taken a flyer on this thing and tried it, and yet everyone was sure that it was useless? Well, one came up for sale on eBay, and I just had to buy it to try it. So I did. The Vigor and Bergeon tools are supposed to be identical from everything I've read. The Vigor model seems dated by the topography of their boxes and documentation, so I'm guessing that the Vigor tool, the TW-1000, came first, and then Bergeon either cloned it or, cross-licensed it. I noted in my searching that some of the Vigor units are stamped made in Japan, while others are stamped made in Switzerland. So there's got to be a story there. Anyway, if you know anything more about the history of these tools, please tell me in the comments. All right, well, this is the box it came in. Vigor tweezer sharpener, TW-1000. There's nothing else on this box that's of note except for the sticker on the front. This is the base of the unit. We have a sharpening stone, sharpening block here, a C240 is what it came with. It's a standard size, 4 inches by 3/8 of an inch on each side, and by unscrewing it, you could put other grit blocks in here. There's a spring that snaps this back, okay? And curiously, there's a spring only on one side. I don't know why they didn't put a spring on both sides, because if you look, I mean, if you press on this side, the block doesn't stay true to the sanding channel, but I'll trust them on this since they made it, not me. And now we have the holders of the tweezers. This one with wheels is for straight tweezers. Okay. This knob on top doesn't do anything, it's just for actually holding it. And this one is for curved tweezers or tweezers with an angle, and this knob, when you screw it down, it actually locks the tweezer holder in place. And so these are just blocks of metal with the channel that goes through it, with the column that goes through it, with a little rubber nipple here, rubber end. And then for the straight tweezer holder, we have two different, what would you call them, caps, I guess, that go on the end, and you use one or the other depending upon how large your tweezers are. We're going to give you a little example here, and as I said, you could put different sharpening stones in here. I'm going to use the one that came with it. It seems to be a good size, a good grit for sharpening tweezers. I'm going to leave that alone. And let's talk about just the straight tweezers for a second. So the idea is that you put the tweezer in this tweezer holder, and then you just place this in the channel, right? Let me get my hand out of the way. And then you'll move it back and forth, and the wheels keep it, I guess, true. So you can't you can't, I don't know. Well, I guess why do they have the wheels? I don't know, I think this would work fine without the wheels, but for some reason they thought that the wheels were necessary, so I'm going to trust them on that since this is their product. And the tweezer tip rubs up against this sharpening stone. So instead of just talking about it, let me just show you it in action. So here are my brass tweezers. And do I want to damage these? Sure, here we go. Well, it didn't get damaged very much. That sucks. Let me kind of bend. I can't believe I'm going to be doing this, but I'm going to try to bend these. There we go. Step number one, you take hold of the straight tweezer holder, and you take your tweezer and you insert it into the plastic tube and keep pushing until it comes out the other end. All right. And now to keep the tweezer really locked in, I'm going to select one of the end caps and screw it in. That's a good size. So this tweezer now is going to be maintained true to the axis of the block. And now here comes a matter of judgment. So if you look at this, if I were to move this back and forth now, the end of the tweezer would be dragged across the sanding block, right, at a certain angle. Well, if you can picture this, if you just imagine this, depending upon how far the tweezer is sticking out, it is either going to, it's going to change the angle of the sharpening that you do. If it's retracted back in, it'll be more of an oblique angle. If it's sticking way out, like so that it contacts with the block here at the very end of it, it'll be more of a sort of flat angle to it. Well, let's just do it this way. I'm going to show it to you on the side. You take it and then you do this. And that's all you need to do. That's the reason for the wheels. The wheels turn the straight tweezer so that it automatically does sharpening across the entire across the entire tip. Now let me just show you what I mean by a more of an oblique angle. I'm going to push the tweezer out just a little bit. Actually, what I need to do, if I'm going to push it out more, I need to use the end cap with the larger hole because farther down the tweezer body is wider. So I'm going to do this. Okay. So that's what it looks like. Still a little bit of wiggle in the tweezer, even though it's held down in the plastic tube and it's held down by the cap, a tiny bit of wiggle. And now, if I stick it out even a little bit further, I'm going to pull it back. It went too much. It's going to catch the very edge of the sharpening block. Let's see what it does. Gave it a more oblique, a more flattened angle on the end. So what would you do after this? Well, I'm doing this at my workbench, which is really bad, but that's where I have my camera set up. There's going to be swarf, or what's the term? Swarf, or there's another word for it, slurry, coming off the tweezers and the sharpening block, and that's going to get all over here. So as with any sharpening tool, you don't want to actually do it on your workbench because you're going to contaminate your workbench. But what you do now is you unscrew the cap and you pull out the tweezers. And there you go. And what I would do then is wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol or pith wood, or rub some Rodico over it. I'll probably just use pith wood and isopropyl alcohol, and there you have the tweezers. So now let me show you what I figured out so far about how to do this with curved tweezers. So for curved tweezers, you don't use this. I don't know what you call it, this holder at all. Instead, we're going to use this one. And this one has a special end to hold the tweezer, in a certain way in the tube. So from what I've been able to figure out, you insert the tweezer not from the plastic end because the curved part can't get through, but you insert it from the business end of the tube, like that, and you really push it in. There we go. And now what you want to do is check the distance from the tip to the sharpening stone, and I have to pull it back even more. Let's see, how do I do that? I loosen the knob here, and I'm going to keep push. There we go. I'm going to push it back a little bit more. So this knob on this rig, actually, when you screw it down, it locks the tube into place. And the idea is that because it's not a symmetrical thing that you're sharpening, you want to adjust the orientation of the tweezer to the sharpening block. So here, as you can see, I have to pull it back even more. Let me just do it with the tube. Let me do it this way. Yeah, still have to pull it back more. There we go. And I think the idea is that you insert it into the tube to so that the tweezer sticks out a reasonable distance relative to where the sharpening block would be, and then you can adjust the back and forth by moving the tube back and forth within the block. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pull it back like that. I'm going to lock it down, and so now I can sharpen this curved end here. Now it's not going to rotate the way the straight tweezer holder did because it has wheels. I'm going to have to decide when to rotate it, and if so, by how much. So here, I think the right thing to do is to have a loop on, and you're going to look very closely. Let me just make sure I'm in the camera. There we go. I'm going to look very closely. Oh, okay. And you hit that. Whoops. Yeah, I'm not doing a good job of it here, am I? I guess I've got to learn to trust the spring to maintain the right amount of pressure. So now I've sharpened this side, so I'm going to loosen it, turn it 180, and I'm going to sharpen the other side. And now if I wanted to do the very tip, I could even do something like this. I could arrange it so that the tip is pointing downward, and I'd have to pull it back a little bit. Let me just take a look at what I've done. Yeah, that looks like a sharpened tweezer tip. Okay, great. So now that I've shown you the tool in operation, what do I think? So there's a couple of things. One is that spring being on only one side of this thing just annoys me. It pulls back on one end, but there's nothing pulling back on the other end. And so the sanding block is a little cattywampus. It's not parallel to the tweezer jig's channel. I guess, even though that's true, if you think about it, the angle of the block to the channel, whatever it's going to be, will be the same at both ends, right? But it ought to be held parallel. I mean, I'm not a mechanical engineer, but it certainly seems that way to me. And I can't believe that eliminating the spring from the left side of the base saved them a ton of money or manufacturing cost, right? I mean, they would have had all the rest of this manufacturing cost, good grief, so why not just put a flipping spring on the left side so the block is always parallel to the channel? So it wasn't manufacturing cost or complexity, and that's just kind of a mystery to me, and I just can't stop thinking about it. Probably says something more about my brain than anything else. The pluses of this tool is that for me, it gives better results than the DiaSharp pads. A lot better results? No, but better results. $200 worth of better results? No. And therefore, for me, it probably gives better results also than using an old school sharpening stone. Now, would it give better results after I have more experience with hand sharpening? Probably not. I'm not saying that I do terribly with hand sharpening, but that this, for me, with where I am now in my education and dealing with tweezer dressing, is better than hand sharpening. I will say there's more precise control of the tweezer's position, and it's locked into position by the jig. And while there is more complexity with this thing, the very slight silver lining to all that complexity is that it does force me to give more thought to the tweezer's position and orientation relative to the sharpening block. So those are the good points. Now, the negative points are, it's the most expensive tool of the bunch by far. The setup and operation of this thing was complicated. Now, I thought I had it all figured out, but actually midway through my experiments, I realized the subtlety in the rotation of the sanding block relative to the tweezer tip held in the jig. When the tweezer jig is in the channel, you might think, well, the tweezer just rubs up against the sharpening stone and that's all there is to it. Well, yes, but there's another angle that can be adjusted, which is the angle of the sharpening stone surface relative to the tweezer tip. Now, you can make the sharpening surface more or less parallel to the tweezer's axis, so the sharpening is more or less shallow relative to the tweezer's axis. So the angle of the sharpening depends on how far the tweezer is relative to the sharpening stone and the angle of the sharpening stone to the tweezer tip. Now, of course, is there yet another subtlety that I haven't stumbled on yet? Probably. The instructions weren't great. I would have liked a treatment of the angles involved and how to best handle curved tweezers. It generated more swarf or slurry by far than the DiaSharp pads. This is due to the sharpening block's composition. It can't be due to the tweezers because the tweezers are the same no matter what tool I use, right? So it's got to be the sharpening block only. Would a 400 grit block generate as much or less swarf as the 240 block? I don't know, but I'll find out. While you need to deal with swarf or slurry, whatever word you grew up with for the stuff that comes off when you sharpen, whenever you sharpen, this kind of block definitely generated more. Just in general, this is why you don't want to do your sharpening at your workbench, regardless of what tool you use, because the little particles, the little bits of grit that come off will contaminate your workbench. Finally, my intuition, which might be wrong, it's been known to happen before, is that a Bergeon 2460 or a similar grooved sharpening plate might very well give 90% of the benefit for literally 15% of the cost. And it would also be simpler to operate with almost no setup. So, am I glad I bought this anyway? Yes, because I was curious and it was fun to investigate a new tool. Will I buy a 2460 and evaluate it? Yes. If the 2460 is 90% of the benefit for 15% of the cost with a much less complexity, will I turn around and sell the TW-1000 on eBay? You bet. But it was still a fun thing to investigate. Finally, should you buy this for your own use? Well, obviously that's up to you. I suspect not. I suspect this is a tool that was too complicated for its own good for anyone. But I'd love to hear other experiences with this tool in the comments. And that's all I have for you today.